What separates good coaches from great leaders? Is it strategy, talent, experience, or the courage to make difficult decisions, while also simultaneously creating environments where people can thrive both from a performance and relationship standpoint? This week on Let's Have This Conversation, I had the privilege of sitting down with my friend Phillip Kroft. He is the head men's soccer coach at the University of Chicago to explore what it truly takes to build and sustain a championship level culture. As a national championship winning coach, Phillip believes that lasting success isn't built on motivation alone. It's his core belief that culture and leadership is built upon accountability, decisive action, decisive leadership, psychological safety, and a shared commitment to something greater than individual achievement. Our conversation explores how leaders can balance confidence with humility while also making informed decisions under pressure, cultivating environments where people from diverse backgrounds can unite surrounding a common cause and goal and be driven by that common purpose. We also discuss what decisive leadership looks like in practice when every decision you make shapes the future of your program, building psychologically positive relationships with student athletes, which ultimately foster trust, resilience, and a long-term growth, creating and cultivating a sustainable culture which outlasts individual seasons and personnel changes. The psychology of motivation and helping individual student athletes maximize their own potential while also contributing to the team. Lessons from coaching from multiple stops, including leading one of the nation's top Division III programs, while also tackling the evolving landscape of collegiate athletics and the opportunities and challenges facing today's modern student athletes. And finally, while sports still remains one of society's best forces for connection, belonging, and bringing people closer together. Whether you're a coach, executive, business leader, or educator, or simply someone passionate about leadership or human performance, this episode is for you because it offers practical insights on building cultures where people simply don't sustain an existence, they thrive. Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: championship organizations are built on one decision, one relationship, and one shared purpose at a time. And lucky for all of us, my conversation with Kroft begins right now. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm excited, man. I'm always excited to talk leadership.
As am I. So, Phillip, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you about leadership program building and how you are influencing the student athletes that you have a chance to coach. It's great to see you and happy Friday to you, my friend.
Same.
Absolutely. So, Philip, I wanted to start by asking you about your philosophy about program building and really building an athlete or student athlete centered approach to leadership and building a program because I know that's important to you to center the athlete, isn't it?
It is absolutely. Yeah, there's a lots of different ways I could go with that answer, but I think it all starts with you got to surround yourself with the right people, right? And who the right people are is very much going to depend on your environment or even the type of leader you are and things like that. So I think a pretty common piece of advice I give to like new head coaches, first time head coaches, is like you do have to kind of quickly figure out and be honest about like what you really need. And to be honest, again, as a new head coach, it might take a little time to figure that out, right? You might need a year in the environment to see, like, yeah, I thought I needed X, but actually in this type of environment, I need Y, right? So that's really interesting for me throughout this. I'm only going into my 6 years as a head coach, so it's not like I'm some expert with it or anything, but there are years that like I've gotten my coaching staff really right. There's years my coaching staff hasn't been as great or maybe as bought into my ideas or however you want to word it, right? And so who you surround yourself with is then going to kind of like trickle down to the people you're actually leading, right? So like, yes, you're leading your assistant coaches, but like if you and your assistant coaches are on the same page about the direction you want to take the program, or even how you want to lead certain leadership philosophies, that is going to then bleed into all the players, right? And then all the student athletes are being taken care of under this same direction and vision versus everyone kind of being like siloed and separated and too many different ideas. So that's kind of the first way that I would answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Philip, I'm also curious to ask you about your approach to recruiting players, the types of players you recruit, and how important is it to you that they fit a certain culture because it's much more than athletic capability, isn't it? So
Yeah,
talk to me about your recruiting approach and how it fits into program building as well, my
yeah.
friend.
That part really is huge, and it sounds like such a cliche. Like the word culture is thrown around a ton, but again, like I've very much experienced years where like I didn't get my team's culture right, and so yeah, how that ties into recruiting, I think again it kind of depends on your environment, right? So the program where I was first a head coach, Johnson and Wales University, like that program was transitioning into Division III. It was coming out of COVID. I kind of had to like rebuild the team. There was like a lot of newness to it. And also to be blunt, like they weren't at the level that like my U Chicago team is. So like if you are at a program, maybe you're taking it over and they're not necessarily a winning program, right? You might almost kind of be forced to kind of like gamble a little bit more in personalities, right? You might be kind of forced to like, I really need talent, right? Like I'm looking to make this thing better to improve my wins and kind of like you hope that the talent kind of comes into your culture. I think at a place like U Chicago that's already experienced so much success, like you and I emailed about it, right? Like U Chicago before I got here was one of the best Division III teams in the country, right? And so it's my job to essentially like keep it that way or try my best to elevate it further. But like I'm very fortunate that yeah, like my recruiting board is very talented players. Like talent isn't the issue. It is a matter of getting in the right personalities that are gonna vibe with the team, improve our culture, be bought in, right? So I tell people all the time, like we like to try to have like a top 5 players at each position on our recruiting board. I will say it's probably very rare that we actually offer the top guy on our board from a purely talent perspective. Like we'll go through that, and the margins are very small between number 1 on your board, and number 5. And like if number 4 has the best personality, and we get them on a visit, and we love the family, and they jive with the current players, and all our current players are telling us like, yeah, coach, that kid's awesome. We think he'd fit in really well. Then that kid who's number 4 on our talent board is absolutely going to jump up to number 1. It's like, well, that's the kid we want. So like again, I think where I'm at currently with my mindset with coaching and leadership is like I'm okay to sacrifice a little bit of talent to make sure we have guys that are contributing to our culture and are bought in for 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know that you're a national championship winning soccer coach, and you've also got experience in the fields of education and project management. And I know that you say you are intrinsically motivated and determined to succeed while empowering the others you lead along the way. So talk to me about your intrinsic motivation and how that influences your approach or philosophy when you're on the soccer field, my friend.
Yeah, I had a boss in one of my government consulting jobs when I was a project manager that told me that I have an overdeveloped sense of right and wrong. And I think I agree with them. So you know, I don't know exactly where that comes from. We could dive into the psychology of my childhood or whatnot, but yeah, no, I think like I just kind of naturally was grown up in like a blue collar environment. Like my mom was a teacher for 37 years. She's now retired. My dad has been like a mechanic. He's been a tow truck driver. He now works on the buses for the school system. Like it was kind of environment of like you work for everything you're going to get, and we're going to be hardworking. We're going to be humble, and so it's just kind of intrinsic motivation to like always try to do better. Was just something that was very much instilled in me and my older brother. And like the way I would phrase it nowadays is like I consider myself to be, yeah, incredibly determined. If you're on the outside looking in, you could argue that that's stubbornness, right? So that's a very fine line between being stubborn and being determined. So, you know, again, it's just kind of the way I've always been. And so, yeah, how that equates to my coaching is like, I am very much willing to put in the work. And, you know, every coach arguably is at this level. And, you know, what that looks like to each coach is going to be different. But I am that coach that's willing to stay up till 2 a.m. watching film every night if that's what I need to do to get my team ready for a game. I'm happy to have as many individual meetings as I need to have with players to, again, increase buy-in or answer their questions or whatever. You know, again, like I've worked with some absolutely awesome coaches. I've had some fantastic mentors along the way. I've had some fantastic assistant coaches. I have had some coaches I've worked with that aren't willing to like stay up late, right? And their personal time is maybe a little bit more important than like, you know, sacrificing for the program. So, you know, that's very much an individual kind of mentality where everyone's going to tell you that they're bought in. Everyone's going to tell you that they work hard, but like, how hard are you really willing to work, right? And so, again, I think at our level, when we're trying to, you know, pursue a national championship, essentially every year, we're trying to stay at the top of Division 3. Like, I'm just very willing to sacrifice and work as hard as I can. So at the end of the day, when I do go to bed, I can be like, you know what, I worked as hard as I possibly could for my team today. Like, I feel good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we talk about building a championship culture, I know that you've worked with several coaches and worked in several different environments. But as we know, you now lead your own program, and you've done that now for a few seasons. So I'm curious for you, what's the most rewarding part about leading your own college program and developing an environment which is intentionally built on people first and really surrounding yourself with the people to be successful. So that's a long way of asking you, what's the best part of coaching in college and creating environments for student athletes and coaches to thrive? My friend, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I've always been really fascinated by mentorship. Like that is something that is very rewarding to me is being able to mentor people. And so like I started out my career as a high school biology teacher. And again, maybe that was in my blood. I saw my mom teaching for so long. But yeah, like I loved working with high school age students that were kind of like figuring things out for the first time, and you're trying to give them life advice and they're kind of awkward and whatever else, right? And so much of a teaching I think is like imparting skills rather than just imparting knowledge, right? And so that's the same thing whether you're teaching biology, teaching soccer, whatever it is. It's like if you have a right skill set, again, saying being hardworking or willing to put in the work, that's going to serve you in every environment you are ever in, right? So like I really enjoy that mentorship aspect. Like I taught AP biology, I taught ESOL biology to kids whose, you know, English was their second language. So like those kids, just getting them to pass the standardized testing at the end of the year was like so ridiculously rewarding, right? It wasn't about like teaching every kid to be a genius in biology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like that kind of mindset has stayed. So like I obviously played college soccer, you know, I played it my whole life. Like, you know, soccer is kind of my passion. So now I have this this rewarding sense of what mentorship is. And I happen to get to do it as a soccer coach, which is fantastic. So, again, I eventually kind of realized that the college game is where I want to be. To kind of go back to answering your question, when I first used to answer this, I used to kind of say it as a joke and laugh, but nowadays I'm dead serious. I don't think anyone in the world needs guidance more than 18 to 22-year-old college age males, right? Like that is the time where, again, like you're away from home, you're making mistakes, you're just learning how to be as a person, who you want to be, your identity. You have so many new ideas coming in from all these people across the world, the country, different professors, right? So all of a sudden your horizons are broadened so much. And again, like I think that mentorship aspect during that 4 years is really important. So there's some statistics about it that I think a college coach actually spends more time with their players than almost anyone else, any other mentorship type person in their life during college, right? They see us more than they see their professors, more than they see their parents, etc. Right? So like I take that very seriously. Like if a guy needs me to write a letter of recommendation for him, great. If a guy, sleeps through training session, great. That's a moment for me to be a mentor and a leader to them and teach them how to actually like be in the real world and handle loss and handle failure. And so again, the mentorship aspect is really, really rewarding. Obviously you hope that turns into, winning seasons and a great culture and stuff like that. But the individual mentorship is really what I find most fascinating about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Philip, I'm going to ask you about sports psychology in a second, but I wanted to ask you about resilience. I know that you did a little bit of research on me, my friend, and I was born with cerebral palsy. And at the age of 9, my friend, I found out that I would never be able to walk without assistance because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. And I always say that everyone's portrait of success is different, and I turned my story into my story of triumphs. I now actually speak to organizations and sports teams about the power of resilience and overcoming obstacles and, developing that growth mindset. So how do you think resilience and growth mindsets are interconnected, my friend?
Yeah, they are because you have to go through hardship in order to prove resilience or learn resilience. And in order to have a growth mindset, right? If you are just a very, I don't know, sheltered person, for lack of a better way to put it, where like nothing bad ever really happens to you, you're almost not like forced to have a growth mindset, right? Everything just kind of comes easy. You're kind of coasting through life. So, I'm not saying anyone needs to like intentionally throw themselves into like a back alleyway or something, but like, yeah, like you need to kind of, again, going back to the mentorship and like what college is almost for, like you do need to kind of fail in certain things to figure out, again, how you deal with those moments, who you really are as a person, right? So yeah, like even going back to like your specific story, like I don't remember the exact quote, but I think it's decently famous of, someone's kind of like pitying the person in the wheelchair, like, oh man, I'm so sorry you're bound to a wheelchair your whole life. And the guy's like, are you kidding me? Like my wheelchair is my way that I get around. Right. So again, it's like your whole perception of your reality really shapes, again, how happy you're going to be as an individual, and even how other people perceive you. Right. So it is very easy in times to kind of get down on your luck or life's unfair or whatever. But if you can switch your mindset to treating every single, negative thing that happens to you as a growth opportunity, I think that's huge. Right. And, just to give you kind of one quick story. So, I'm a Christian. Like I try to do Bible studies pretty routinely, probably not as much as I should. But I'm on a Bible study right now with other coaches, and every week we just start with what is one thing you struggled with the past week, and then what was a blessing this past week. And I would say 90% of the time, the what you struggled with and your blessing end up being the exact same thing, right? Because you're like, oh, this really crappy thing happened, but then I realized, okay, that was actually like a blessing for my week, and it turned my week around, or how I was able to respond to it. So very long-winded way to say of like, I think who we are when the chips are down, when things get tough, when you have to show resilience and a growth mindset, I think that really does actually define who you are as a person and who you are as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about sports psychology and motivating athletes. When we talk about sports psychology, we often talk about a mastering versus a task-oriented mindset, where we measure success differently, whether we're talking about the growth, the effort, and the continual improvement versus an ego mindset where we're judging athletes on performance alone and whether they're advancing from a performance standpoint. So, for you, I'm curious, what sort of sports psychology realm do you lean on most often? The task oriented mindset or the ego sort of task oriented mindset where it's based solely on performance? I'm curious to get your answer there, my friend.
Yeah, I think when I went through my graduate studies, so I have a master's degree in positive coaching and athletic leadership, which is like essentially sports positive psychology.
Yeah.
Um, so when I went through the degree, I think I was very I was very like influenced by it in a very good way of like, almost like there are right ways and wrong ways. And so, if you would ask me like, I don't know, 6 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, like task oriented always. And then as I've, been a head coach for the past 6 years and whatnot, I think it is, it becomes more relevant each year how much like results do still matter. Like results in life matter. So like it is great to be task oriented, but even in like, a 9 to 5 or a business, if you don't close a sale at the end of the day, eventually you will be judged on that and you could be let go from your job, right? So it's like as much as I want my guys to again have a growth mindset, be task oriented, do things the right way, if we don't ever win a soccer game, yeah, like I'm going to get fired or, I'm going to have to bring in transfers or cut a guy from my team, whatever it is. Right. So there's those negative kind of parts of it that people almost want to like ignore, but like that's a part of it as well. That's a part of sports. So it's a long way of me saying like, I think there's just times for both, right? When we're going through our week of preparation for an opponent, it is all about being task oriented, right? It's eating the right things. It's going to sleep at the right time. It's making sure you're paying attention during the scouting report. It's reviewing film. It's meeting with the coaches. You're going through all these tasks to be as prepared as possible. And then in the game, you can certainly break it down to certain tasks that you need to do as well. You need to win your 50-50 duels. You need to win the ball back for your team. You need to make hard runs in the attack. There's still tasks to do. But at the end of the day, if you get the result, if you win the game, then that kind of, the whole like winning solves everything, right? That kind of takes care of so many other issues. So we try to kind of like train our guys that like if you do the right things over and over and over, the results will come. And that's the same thing in a game as well. If you do the same things we are asking you to do or the things that we know are going to work against an opponent, even if we score a goal in a completely other random way, right? Like soccer is a very random sport. Every sport is. There's enough, individual moments of greatness or randomness to it. So that's fine if a goal comes from somewhere else, but we need to accomplish these certain tasks in order to put ourselves in the best position to win this game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's all about building good habits, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Absolutely. Philip, I'm curious to ask you about building a team culture from an emotional standpoint. Now, we all, as coaches, go through the tactical or strategic portions of strategies in building culture, but I'm also curious to ask you about beyond the conditioning or physical aspects of the game strategy. How do you go about measuring the emotional fitness of your team? How and what tells you that your players are generally committed to creating, the trust, the support, and the emotional capacity in order to compete? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a really hard one to answer because again, like so many things we're talking about, culture, leadership, motivation, it isn't tangible, right? Like I can't put a number on like my team is emotionally ready to compete today, right? It is very much an intangible thing that you kind of just get the feel of, right? And that's where things like experience come in of just like, hey, I know how to get my team ready for this type of opponent, or I know the kind of current emotional level of my current team and when they might need a little more from me or less from me where I can step back. So it is kind of like a day to day back and forth of trying to figure out as a leader, like, yeah, what does your team emotionally need? but just to try to give you some tangibles on it, like we do have a survey that is every single morning. The guys are supposed to wake up and fill out the survey, and it kind of has some questions related to like how did you sleep, what's stressing you today, what's like a one word goal for the day. So there's some things there where we try to kind of like gauge how emotionally they might be ready for maybe a training session. um, I mean, we're able to see like how much film guys have watched, right? Like in our film platform, we can actually see like how many minutes a guy has spent watching film. So that's a way to kind of quickly see like, all right, are the guys really bought in? Or are we kind of taking this opponent lightly? Every time we meet as a team, I try to have guys speak up. And so we'll normally start our team meetings, even if it's just like a film session. We don't just show up and, hey, turn off the lights, boom, we're watching film. We always start with some version of like a team culture type thing. So it might be like, hey, we want someone to stand up and tell the team what they thought about, training this morning, or, it's been 24 hours since our last opponent. What are some of your reflections? And so we'll have guys raise their hands, stand up in front of the group. And so again, like in those moments, you are kind of gauging like, yeah, like what is the emotions of my team right now? Are they still really frustrated about the last game? Have they kind of come to terms with it and we're moving forward? And again, those are ways for you as a coach to kind of see, like, if I pose one of those questions and no one on my team is comfortable raising their hand and standing up in front of the group, yeah, my team probably isn't emotionally in a good spot right now. We do need to do some more activities to make them more vulnerable or more willing to share. So, I do think leadership a lot of times is about trying to exemplify the qualities that you think the team needs. So like I try to be very vulnerable with the team as well, right? Like there are moments I'll let the team know something I'm struggling with, or like, hey guys, I recognize that I got that tactic wrong for that last opponent. Like, good job responding to it. Thanks for being coachable in the moment. Like, now we move forward. So, yeah, you kind of pick and choose moments as a coach to show your own vulnerability, or again, to show the habits that you want your team to exemplify.
Yeah, absolutely. And Philip, I know that it's very important to you to carry on the important tradition of U Chicago. As you mentioned, they're one of the most successful Division Three teams in the country. So I'm curious to ask you about sustainable habits that you have as a coach and as a team culture to elevate the culture and standing and expectations of the program. And how have you worked to build it as well, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think so much of it goes back to, again, like the people that you're bringing around the program or surrounding it with. So U Chicago, when I got here, I think I was very blown away by how many people like wanted to be involved with the team, right? Like my first recruiting class, like my roster size ballooned. Like the roster I took over had 31 players, and then the next year we had 35. And so, there were guys who stayed for like COVID fifth year. There were some grad transfers we brought in. I had a huge coaching staff. It was kind of like I was looking at all these resumes and all these different personalities. I was like, man, like all these people want to be involved in U Chicago. That's amazing. And so I think I was a little bit too open to having like too many voices, too many ideas, too many people involved. And so since then, I've really worked to like shrink the roster down. And again, that's not in like a negative way to anyone. It's just being a little bit more selective about, again, the exact personalities I want that I think will like drive the team forward. So there really is no handbook for it, right? There weren't previous coaches saying, hey, this is exactly how I did it. This is how you have success at U Chicago. Now you just keep it going. Like every coach has to figure out, the needs of their team a little differently. And so again, where I've really focused going into my fourth year now is you got to get the right people involved, right? And so a lot of that is building trust and going through kind of multiple interviews, getting to know the families in the recruiting process, like assessing how they kind of answer tough questions, talking through like, hey, if you are on the bench, what does that look like? Everyone has the dream scenario of coming in and being a starter right away. But same thing for my coaching staff as well, going through references, getting examples of how they've responded in hard times. If I can go see them coach in a different environment, kind of see how they interact with players, like the more you can just know about people before you bring them in, I think the better sense you can get of like, yes, this is exactly how this person can like attribute to our environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you specifically about how you look for qualities in your team captains because, championship teams are often player led and, coaches take a secondary role if teams are truly going to be successful. So I'm curious to ask you about what qualities do you look for when you're selecting team captains, and how do you intentionally develop leadership throughout the roster, my friend? What are your thoughts
Yeah.
there?
So I mentioned how much I enjoy mentorship. Probably I guess my second favorite thing about leadership is leadership development. So yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. If your team's going to be successful, it has to be led from within. It has to be player led in some form or fashion, right? So again, the head coach has the general direction. The head coach that can make the hard decisions. The head coach has the plan, whatever. But yeah, it has to be internally led from within. So I think even when you look back to the 2022 team that won the national championship, went undefeated. They did have a great coach. Do not get me wrong there. But the team was very intrinsically motivated. Like they'd been to two Final Fours before that. They were kind of sick of losing. They were pretty senior heavy. They had some like boisterous personalities in the upperclassmen. And so again, that team was like very poised and ready to make a run at the national championship. Now, them going undefeated for the season is like unheard of and incredible. So again, still very well coached. But that team was almost like going to succeed or win a lot of games just because who they were as a team. And so, me as a coach, again, like we want to inhibit players to take on as much as possible. So I do a lot of leadership development. We'll go through like resilience type exercises, or we'll have guys make some decisions for the team that are maybe hard decisions of like, hey, we've had a guy show up late twice this week. I have what's called a leadership council. So it's a group that's a little bit bigger than just the captains. And so I'll meet with the leadership council of like, hey, I have my ideas as a coach of how I want to deal with this guy who's continuously showing up late. How do you guys want to deal with it? Right. And so rather than just all being on me as the head coach and having to make the right decision, now those guys are thinking internally of like, oh man, yeah, that's tough. Like, how do we deal with our buddy, our guy that we're super close with, that we live with in the dorms or whatever, who maybe isn't taking the soccer side as seriously as he needs to. So I think you have to empower your guys to, again, try to lead from within as much as possible. There's still so much that has to fall on the head coach. And again, hard decisions have to come from the top. But yeah, you want the guys to have buy-in, and buy-in is usually created from them kind of coming up with their own ideas. I think a good example of that from like a soccer sense is I let my players handle the vast majority of our attacking set pieces. So like defensive set pieces, we are very organized as a coaching staff. We know exactly what we want. It's very data driven. On the attacking side, I'm like, whatever you guys are passionate about, however creative you want to get, we're going to train it every week and you guys can just have a blast with it. And so there's so much buy-in to when we're doing these attacking set piece drills. The guys are really pumped when it works in a game. So again, to me, that's much more valuable than just, hey guys, here are attacking set pieces, memorize them, go out there and execute. Right. So, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
long-winded ramble of, yeah, you got to create buy-in and let the guys lead it from within.
Yeah, but you inspired me to ask a follow-up question in that regard. So much of leadership is giving people the autonomy to be successful or learn from failure. So tell me, how do you help players, develop sort of the knack for developing sort of their leadership autonomy and taking leadership accountability and learning through failure? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I like to tell my leaders within the group, so like my assistant coaches, my captains, the guys that are on my leadership council, I tell them like, you have my full trust to like say whatever you want. Like, get fiery, get passionate, step in and make a coaching point, whatever it needs to be. Like even the current players, if you feel like an activity isn't like high enough energy, you guys as captains and leaders in the group have the right to stop it. It doesn't have to be that the coaches stop it and, rip into the team. The players can do it themselves. And so what I tell them is you guys have full autonomy to do that. If you ever go too far, or if I ever think it isn't the right decision or the message wasn't right, I will then correct it, or I'll let you know afterwards, like, hey, that wasn't quite the right way to handle it. So a lot of it is kind of like trial and error. And again, you're empowering them right away with like, I'm going to trust you completely because you're one of our guys. From there, I'll let you know if I think you made a wrong decision. Because again, like we're talking about, it's not, there's no playbook of like, this is exactly how you handle this situation. Now, this is how you handle this one, right? Like a lot of it is just kind of feeling it out and getting things wrong. And so, again, you have to almost kind of be like brave enough to let your team figure that out on their own and kind of get some things wrong. And again, as a head coach, you are always just kind of like steering and trying to right the ship. So if I have a captain that goes off on the team and he's completely on an island, everyone else is like, I thought that was fine. I can then step in and be like, hey guys, this is what he meant, but yeah, we're mostly good. We do need to correct this. And then I can talk to that captain and be like, hey man, what were you seeing? What were you feeling? Okay, great. Next time, this is how I would handle it. So again, you got to let people fail, right? Like for 4 years in college, I can't tell my players exactly what to do in every situation. You got to try some stuff. You got to fail, and that's going to make you ready for the real world.
Oh, well, some of the most important lessons you can learn are through failure, right?
Yep. 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Philip, I'm curious to ask you about the current state of college soccer as a whole, and where do you think there are opportunities to grow the game of college soccer now the World Cup is wrapping up this weekend, and I think we're having this conversation at an interesting time and place for the whole sport of soccer. But specifically, how do you view the future and current state of college soccer, my friend?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, World Cup, right? You hope that there's a boom of interest in soccer here in the country, which I think there definitely will be. No, it's a really interesting question. So, like, I've been in college coaching for 11 years now, and take for instance, like at the Division 1 level, they've been trying to make it essentially like a year-long sport, right? Similar to, again, every professional environment, even kids club environments, high school, like you do play pretty much year-round. But in college, you're kind of limited to this competitive fall season. And the spring, you still train, but it's kind of more focused on like individual development. There's not really games, there's not really much to play for. And so they've been trying to make it, essentially a 2 semester, 10-month season. Every time it's come up, it's gotten shot down. So like it just got shot down again. And I very much get it from if you're a president of a university, why would you let soccer, a non-revenue generating sport, get to like play for a whole year, provide athletic trainers for a whole year, have field space for them for a full year, when every other sport is very much limited in the same way that soccer currently is. So I get why it keeps getting shot down. So it's just interesting how like every year or two there seems to be some kind of dramatic shift, right? So the 10-month season was a big push for like the past year or two. It ended up being shot down. Now all of a sudden Division 1 players are allowed 5 years to play instead of 4. Right. I don't think that'll affect us at the Division 3 level. Division 3 remains kind of like holistic, almost like the last of amateur sports, I like to say, right? Like NIL hasn't really hit Division 3 much. Like, sure, guys can go out and do a commercial for a new sports drink and they get sent, a case of the drink, but we don't have guys doing like car commercials and making 50K off of a commercial or anything. So, Division 1 is very much becoming kind of that like more business, right? Transfer portal, all that stuff. Division 3, I think, is still staying, I don't know, I guess pure, for lack of a better way to put it. And obviously I'm biased coaching at this level, but yeah, college athletics it's without sounding overly negative, there's still so much value and positives in it. I do think it's just becoming much, much more like a business, right? And we even saw that, things like Title 9, things like, COVID happening and certain programs getting cut, like it's always going to kind of come back to money and what's generating revenue for a school. Again, how much resources do we have? Can we add this new sport? Do we need to cut a sport? Like it's always those tough decisions that are made. But I think in general for Division 3 soccer, again, it's still very pure. You have guys that are joining these types of schools without athletic money for the right reasons, normally because they want to be at that level, they want to be at that school. So many Division 3 schools are high academic, right? So I want to be at a high academic school. I value my education. So again, I'm biased, but I think Division 3 soccer will continue to grow in a very positive way. And I think people who want kind of the more business type of sports will continue to go Division 1. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that. It's just about kind of knowing what you want out of your college experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for you, I want to talk about learning from every level because before you became a collegiate head coach, you competed at the Division 1 level at Mount St. Mary's University and also worked within the youth system at the MLS clubs, including DC United and Austin FC. So I'm curious, what lessons did those experiences continue to teach you, and how have they helped you shape your coaching philosophy and leadership style, my friend? Fred, what do you want to
Yeah.
share there, my friend?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. I won't go through every single year and every single environment, but no, like I very much have learned from every environment I've been in. It's been amazing. I think each time you get into a new environment, it's very humbling, right? Like there are so many people that are just there before you and know the current environment. So again, whether that's DC United or coming into U Chicago and working with some of the highest academic students in the country, there's just always more to learn, right? So I started out as a high school coach and a club coach, and yeah, I think coming from playing Division 1, I probably thought I knew a lot, but I've never actually coached, right? So I'm JV and I'm assistant to the varsity coach at the high school level, and I think I got some ideas better than him. But then this guy goes on and like wins a state championship at the high school level, and you're like, all right, well, this guy clearly knows what he's doing. So same thing with DC United. Like I got into that environment, and I just wanted to be a sponge, like to see how much those guys. It's essentially like a think tank. Like every training session is written up on the whiteboard, and they are working to make it the best session as possible. They're getting feedback from everyone, so it's not just I'm a DC United coach, I know what I'm doing. It's always trying to improve and get better. I think DC United taught me a lot in terms of like the technical and tactical side of the game, and really in terms of how to like push players, right? So like this sounds kind of negative, but I swear, like my 3 years at DC United, like there wasn't a ton of like smiling and laughing and joking around. It was still a great environment, but like it was business. Like they were trying to produce pros, right? And then so
Mm-hmm.
I go down to Austin FC for the summer, and it's a kind of similar thing. It's like we're gonna have fun because we're in a soccer environment, but like it's business. We're trying to make players better. We can't waste a minute, right? You need to be efficient with your time. So you learn how to just kind of be in this really rigorous environments. And then you take that back to the college game where, again, it's not life or death. No one's going to get fired. The players aren't making money, but it's like, well, how much do you want to put into it? It goes back into the intrinsic motivation, right? Like I remember when I first got my head job at Johnson and Wales, at the Division 3 level, I had so many families that would ask like, oh, it's Division 3. So like, you probably run it differently than like Division 1 or like how you did things at DC United. I'm like, no, I run it exactly the same. It's just with different resources at this level, right? So sure, we don't have a bunch of data analysts and all this stuff, whatever, but like we still try to run our environment and try to keep it, as professional as possible. And so again, I've had so many awesome mentors. I know I'm kind of starting to ramble now, but like the places where I've been an assistant coach, Catholic University, Davidson, like I've been surrounded by so many guys who had been in it for so long and had so much knowledge. And so again, you just kind of be a sponge. And then when you get the opportunity to be a head coach, again, it's a lot of trial and error. It's what have I seen that I've liked? What have I seen that I didn't like? How am I going to try to be different, be better? Whatever it is. And so yeah, you figure out kind of what your strengths are, where you need help in terms of assistant coaches, and yeah, you just stay open to always learning and always getting better because that's what leadership is. No one ever has it all the way figured out.
There's a sign in my office that says the day that you stop learning is
Yeah,
the day you die, right?
that's right. That's right.
Because no matter how many degrees you have on the wall or how many years of experience you have, you can always learn something from somebody else, right?
Yep. 100%.
Absolutely. And Phil, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of
Yeah.
those two questions is a two-part question. We talked earlier about mentoring athletes, but I also wanted your perspective on mentoring coaches and how you've seen coaches evolve over the time with your time in being a head coach, even at the assistant level. I'm curious to ask you about mentoring coaches, and then secondarily, I'm curious to ask you about some of your favorite memories leading you Chicago, my friend.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting question for me because again, I'm only 6 years into being a head coach, but I have very much shifted in how I handle my assistant coaches. Like I think starting out thing and even like the harder tasks like I would always take, it's like I got to do that. I'm the head coach. But then what I've kind of realized over 6 years is like almost every single assistant coach wants to be a head coach. So if you constantly shelter them from the hard tasks, you're not doing them justice in them learning, right? So it used to be like I wanted to kind of keep my assistant coaches happy. So it's like I'll let them do a lot on like the soccer side, but like, I'll take the administrative stuff here, I'll plan the bus or I'll plan the meals and this and that and the other. And then I realized it's like, again, if they want to be a head coach, they got to learn how to do this logistical crap too, right? So, it's become, it used to be like I would lead every like recruit visit we'd have on campus. Like I'll just lead all of it. If you guys can't be here, no problem. Now it's like, no, like I want you to lead this part of the tour. And like you need to prove to this family that like you're as bought in as the assistant coach as I am as the head coach. And so again, now when that guy gets his head job, he's used to doing his own scouting reports, running individual sessions with players. He knows how to book the buses for away trips. He knows how to talk about a campus and what gets things, families excited. So again, it used to be like, let me do all these important tasks, but yeah, you got to essentially trust the people that are around you. You got to try to empower them. Again, it goes back to the exact same way I treat the players. Like I have to let my assistant coaches kind of fail and whatnot too. And again, as a head coach, you then try to correct and step in when you need to. If I feel that, hey, this visit isn't really going well with this family, they're not really responding super well to my assistant coach who's leading the tour. Okay, I'm going to step in for the next part, or I'll take them to a meal and I'll sit down and kind of clarify some of their questions. So anyway, long-winded way of saying of like I used to not mentor my assistant coaches much. Now I realize if I mentor my assistant coaches, that's more people to then help mentor the players. So that all in all, I think a very net positive. And then, man, some of my favorite memories at U Chicago, that's hard to answer. Like we had a game last year that like so many rain delays. We were wondering if we were even going to get the game in, like conference game. It got super late. We ended up scoring and winning that one nothing. And like every weather break, we were in there like coaching in the locker room, coaching the team, pulling up clips from the game. Like that was probably one of the most fun just like games and coaching that we did. And it took like 3 hours, but we ended up getting the result. So there's fun moments like that. There's I don't know. There's water balloon fights we do during a recovery session on the field instead of playing. I don't know. Every away trip is always so much fun. Like we're pretty fortunate at U Chicago. We're in the UAA, and so we get to fly to play. In New York City, we go to Atlanta, we go to Boston. So we fly in a day early. The guys are walking around New York City. They're going into like the Harry Potter store. Like all those moments are so fun. So yeah, when I think about memories, obviously there's some games that come to mind, but I'm not one of those coaches that can recite like every game and every result and we scored in this minute. It's a lot more of the kind of intangible stuff and kind of the moments in between that are fun and make it the most enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, I'm curious, what has you most excited about this upcoming season? And when you look at your own personal and professional legacy, how do you want your legacy to extend both on and off the field, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think this upcoming season, I am most excited about our leadership within the team. So the team I took over had awesome guys that were part of it. I think the team I took over had a lot of very quiet personalities. And again, that's not taken away from them or not to say that they weren't good leaders in their own right. But I think we've kind of gotten the balance right at this point through recruiting, through leadership development. And, we kind of have our loud guys, we have our passionate guys, we have our energy guys, and we have the quiet leadership types that can pull a guy aside. So, I think, yeah, going into year 4, these guys that are seniors were freshmen the first year I had them. Like, I think the leadership development within that class, within the junior class, I think we've got the leadership to a point we now want it within the program. And then my legacy, I would say I want guys just to know how much I cared about them. And again, going back to like, I want them to be able to recognize like, yeah, Coach Kroft, we could tell how much work he put in, back to the whole comment of like, he went to bed every night knowing he did as much as he could for the team that day. Like I try to never say no to my team for stuff they need, right? If they want, something different in the pregame meals, if they do want to do an extra film session, if a guy wants an extra individual session on the field, if a guy just wants to meet with me, like, I wasn't planning to be in the office today, but I will drive in to meet with you today. Like I try to always be around for them. And I think that's something that's taken for granted when you're in it. Like even going back to like my own, when I was a Division I player, it's like, I didn't recognize how much our coach and staff was working for us or cared about us. So it is something you kind of recognize in retrospect. So even keeping in touch with guys as they get jobs and get married and have kids. It's like that stuff's always so rewarding to just kind of like stay involved in their lives and again just know how much they have someone that cares about them. So I do not care if a guy comes back and tells me, you were the favorite coach I've ever had. I don't care about that whatsoever. I don't really care, about X's and O's or coach gave this great halftime speech that one game. I want them to just know that they had someone who really cared about them as individuals for 4 years and push them to be better and hope that that does serve them later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Phillip, tell me if people want to support the program or get in contact with it. What's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Yeah, so we have listed on our website are the coaches' email addresses. It just goes to a shared inbox, and then the coach kind of responds individually from there. So yeah, our email address is on the website if anyone wants to reach out. I try to respond to literally every email that comes across my desk. So I try to be pretty transparent. I try to be pretty generous with my time and open book. So yeah, I'm happy to respond to anyone who reaches out through email. And then yeah, supporting the program is always great. In my email signature, there's a link of how to donate and whatnot. I'm sure those links are across the athletics website as well. So we can always do more with more.
Absolutely. Well, I'm certainly thankful that you responded to my email to have
That's right.
this great conversation about leadership, player development, and everything in between, my friend. I really want to thank you for your time, your insights on coaching, leadership, and developing student athletes to be not just great athletes, but great people. Your work in the space is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for your time on my behalf and for engaging in conversation, my friend. It's most appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin. Likewise, man. Thanks for taking the time and reaching out. It's been fun.